that we have learned how to create a magic ring and we've learned how to increase, I'm going to show you how to decrease, which primarily you're going to be decreasing sometimes throughout your project, but mostly at the end when you're trying to close the body of whatever you're working on. So this is a little bit more complicated than increasing. Increasing, again, is just placing those 2 stitches in each stitch space as opposed to 1. Now for decreasing, it gets a little bit more complex, so we're going to pay a little more attention to what we're doing here. So you're going to see this is the next stitch that you would traditionally be working straight through, just placing your hook right into that stitch to work into it. But for a decrease, it's going to be involving the next 2 stitches, but you're only going to be using the front loop of your following stitch. So this is the stitch we're working into, and you're just going to be using that front loop. You're not going to insert all the way through as you normally would. So if you're working all the way through, you're going to have those 2 loops on your hook, but you're just going to be working through that front loop only. So now, in order to combine the 2 stitches into 1, which is what decreasing does, so that instead of having 2 stitches in the next row, you have 1 in that place, you're going to insert your hook in the following stitch. So now you have this loop, which is the original loop that you had on your hook, and now you have inserted through the front loop of that following stitch. So now you are going to kind of twist your hook a little bit and insert into that next stitch, just as if you were going to single crochet. So now you're going to grab your yarn by yarning over, pull through, and then this can be a little bit confusing to figure out. So kind of keep a good tension on this part of your work so that you can kind of twist your hook as you need to, but you're not going to yarn over, you're just going to pull this loop through that second strand that's on your hook. So you're going to pull that loop through, and then you're just going to continue pulling through that final loop. So I'm going to show you a few more times because that can be really confusing. So for the following stitch, you're going to insert your hook right into the front loop only, and then you're going to insert your hook into the following stitch. You're going to yarn over, pull through, and you're going to pull through that middle strand and then pull through that final strand. So you're only going to have 1 loop left on your hook at the end. So I'll show you one more time. You'll see these stitches appear to be much more stretched out than the stitches that you previously increased in. That's because they're spanning over 2 stitches instead of 1, so that you have the proper stitch count in your following row. So moving on, you're going to do the same thing, insert in only that front loop of the next stitch, insert into the following stitch, yarn over, pull through, without yarning over, pull through this middle strand, and then again, without yarning over, pull through that last. So you're gonna see this side that was increased in is kind of much more branched out than this side that you're decreasing in. So it's gonna look more scrunched, it's gonna look smaller, and that's going to create the effect that you need in the following rows and make sure that you have the proper amount of stitches. So again, just like when you're increasing, you need to pay a lot of attention to your stitch count in the rows where you're increasing and decreasing. So definitely use a stitch marker, definitely double check your rows when you're done, because it can be very confusing to keep track of what you've done and what you haven't, and it's very easy to miscount. So just make sure that you have a stitch marker, possibly multiple if you feel like you need to keep track of where you increased and where you decreased just while you're starting out, but just make sure that you have the right amount of stitches in your row so that you have the right shape to your project.